Hey everyone, welcome to the Dankcast Dungeon and welcome to our second podcast. This one's going to be about the banned list. If you like what we're doing here, please do like and subscribe. Maybe head over to our Patreon. And yeah, we'd really appreciate it. The first question for today is going to be, what's the point of the banned list? And to start that off, I think I'm going to go ahead and read the banned list commentary from Wizards of the Coast, and also the philosophy behind Commander proposed by the Commander's Rules Committee. And from what I understand, the Rules Committee kind of started the game.
Kind of, sort of, yeah. It's basically the way that the format Elder Dragon Highlander started was a group of people created it, and then they made their own ban list based off of their playgroup stuff. And then as the game became increasingly popular and grew more widespread, Wizards wanted some of the action as well, so they made Commander, which is the legally distinct version of Elder Dragon Highlander.
I think it's a better name too.
Probably, yeah. It's definitely, it rolls off the tongue easier than Elder Dragon Highlander, although EDH is shorter still, whatever, doesn't matter.
Hey, you know what's shorter? C.
True. Anyway, instead of making it like a tournament format and taking over the game completely, like, they acknowledged that the original community existed and they valued their input. So they got together and made a group that consisted both of Wizards employees and members of the original community to make kind of a joint effort, sort of a dealio, and that's what the Rules Committee is.
So I'm just going to go ahead and quickly read the Wizard ban list commentary.
And if you want to skip ahead, I'm sure some helpful person will put a timestamp in the comments as to where.
So they say, one key to the continued health of Magic is diversity. It is vitally important to ensure that there are multiple competitive decks for the tournament player to choose from. Why? If there were only a single viable deck to play, tournaments would quickly stagnate as players were forced to either play that deck or a deck built specifically to beat it. In addition, different players enjoy playing different types of decks. If there are plenty of viable options to play, there will be more players at more tournaments. To help maintain the diversity and health of the Magic tournament environment, a system of banned and restricted lists have been developed. These lists are made up of cards that are either not allowed at all or are allowed only in a limited manner. Cards are usually banned from play if they enable a deck or playstyle that is heavily skews the play environment. What does that mean? If the card were legal, a competitive player either must be playing it or must be specifically targeting it with his or her own strategies. Some cards are banned because they have proven to simply be too powerful in their respective format. While hundreds of hours are spent rigorously playtesting sets before the release, the complexity of Magic makes it nearly impossible to accurately predict all the ways new cards interact with older ones. Okay, Corbin will read the longer text from the Rules Committee, which might apply more. That's the commentary for all the formats, but it seems to apply to Commander the least.
And in case you are confused, yes, there are Commander tournaments at your local LGS. However, they are not taken into account when Wizards is making a ban list. So, Commander Rules Committee philosophy. Commander is for fun. It's a socially interactive, multiplayer Magic the Gathering format full of wild interaction and epic plays, specifically designed as an alternative to tournament Magic, even though there's Commander tournaments everywhere. As is fitting for a format in which you choose an avatar to lead your forces into battle, Commander focuses on resonant experience. Each game is a journey the players share, relying on a social contract in which each player is considerate of the experiences of everyone involved. This promotes player interaction, inter-game variance, and variety of playstyles, and a positive communal atmosphere. At the end of an ideal Commander game, someone will have won, but all participants will have had the opportunity to express themselves through their deck building and gameplay. That's magical. The rules of Commander are designed to maximize these experiences within a game of Magic. The addition of a commander, larger life total, and deck building restrictions emphasize the format's flavor. They increase deck variance and add more opportunities for participation and expression. The goal of the ban list is similar. It does not seek to regulate competitive play or power level, which are decisions best left to individual playgroups. The ban list seeks to demonstrate which cards threaten the positive player experience at the core of the format or prevent players from reasonable self-expression. The primary focus of the list is on cards which are problematic because of their extreme consistency, ubiquity, and or ability to restrict others' opportunities. No single rule can establish criteria for a ban. There are many mitigating or exacerbating factors. Some cards will represent an extreme on a single axis, Others are a confluence of multiple smaller issues. The following list isn't exhaustive, nor is it a checklist, but it represents ways in which cards challenge the positive experience players look for in Commander games. It includes cards which easily or excessively do one of the following, or more, cause severe resource imbalances. Armageddon. Wait, that's not on the ban list. Allow players, okay, I won't do it for each bullet point. Allow players to win out of nowhere. Prevent players from contributing to the game in a meaningful way. Cause other players to feel they must play certain cards, even though they are also problematic. Are very difficult for players to interact with, especially if doing so requires dedicated, narrow responses when deck building. Interact poorly with multiplayer nature of the format or the specific rules of Commander. Lead to repetitive gameplay. So those cards which are banned likely meet a few of these card criteria in a significant way. Not all cards which meet some of the criteria need to be banned. We prefer to be conservative with what goes on or comes off the ban list. Commander players often become emotionally attached to their decks through play and personalization, and we value that experience highly. We only want to disrupt that bond when necessary. Commander is designed to be keeps going.
Yeah, we're not done.
Commander is designed to be a malleable format. We encourage groups to use rules and the ban list as a baseline to optimize their own experience. This is not licensed for an individual to force their vision onto a playgroup, but encouragement for players to discuss their goals and how the rules might be adjusted to suit those goals. The format can be broken. We believe games are more fun if you don't.
Oh, I know that's the end. I remember that line.
Yep.
Yeah.
I have qualms with that, literally that last sentence.
I have problems with most of that.
Okay, well, so after reading that, do you all have any extra input on what the point of the ban list is?
TLDR, the point of the ban list is to create an environment, a gameplay environment, which everyone can have fun in their individual ways.
If you go on the Commander website and you look at the ban list, they will list on each of those cards the reason that they was originally banned, or at least the reason that they could find it was originally banned, because that list did not start off with that list of reasons. They went back not too long ago and went through and filled in things for each of them, and I think it can kind of be broken down into 3 categories. Apart from like all the conspiracies and the anti-cards and the culturally insensitive ones, which are banned universally for lots of reasons. Silver border cards too. Anyway, power level makes sense. Like, you don't want something to be completely imbalanced. Cards that are too expensive. Like, that was one of the things that they originally did to make the format more accessible to everyone, is they put 8 of the power 9 on there.
Oh, that was for price?
Yeah, if you look at the reason that they have in there for the Moxes and for Black Lotus, it says, in addition to being powerful, these are too expensive and we want to remove barrier for entry. And then there's a few on there that are just kind of on there because they felt like they didn't like those kinds of gameplay things, which is the section I have the most qualms with, because it seems kind of arbitrary, the things that they picked.
Golos died for your sins.
Golos died for your sins. Golos is the big one.
I disagree with that, all hands down. When a card becomes too prevalent that everyone's running it for the sake of fucking value, the card shouldn't be in the game.
Yeah, but that's a choice.
Yeah.
I've never owned a Golos and I've won more games, so.
The issue that I have with this ban is a couple of reasons. One, they said in their philosophy that they don't ban cards specifically to stop this kind of a thing. Like, it's a creative expression, it's not breaking the game, it's not being oppressive. It's like, if someone decided that they want to take all of the interesting parts of their commander out of the decks, they're playing Golos in front of a pile of 99 cards, that deck, so be it. Like, that's a personal choice or problem, depending on your perspective. There's really nothing stopping them from then swapping that over to Kenrith, because it kind of does the same thing. It's just generically good. The way that I see it, Golos was just a fine commander.
So the next question is, do you think that this philosophy and this ban list achieves these goals?
No.
Nah.
It all sounded really nice until you got to like the second page, the bullet list.
The bullet list,
like,
yeah.
I don't even like the first page part.
You don't like the spirit of the game.
I hate the spirit of the game. I think everyone should suffer. No.
You're a mean one, Mr. Cringe.
Kinda. You definitely have the right octave for that, so. It feels like it's very inconsistent. It feels like the way that their philosophy impacts the game is not necessarily conducive with the way that everyone plays the game.
There's a part in the ban list philosophy that specifically states they want interactive people doing things, people interacting with each other, both verbally and on the stack, all that jazz. But one thing that I've observed in my decade, more than a decade playing Commander, is that to an extent, and I don't want to generalize or group people, but I've observed a lot of people that just want to show up and do the thing that their deck is designed to do, and a lot of times that is not to interact with the everybody else, right? They want to do their one thing, which then takes away from the philosophy right away, right off the bat. When you don't make bans to encourage the play style that you want because they want people to discuss among themselves, we're not going to do that. Like, as a whole, like, people want direction. And I said this in our last podcast. You kind of give people a taste of direction and then you're like, oh yeah, but like also just make your own decisions. They're not going to do that. They're going to go to the stuff that you already have and treat that as the 10 Commandments.
A little bit touching more on that. It feels like it's kind of applied like very inconsistently about different things. Like, for instance, the reason that they put Emrakul the Aeon's Torrent onto the ban list is because they say, well, you can resolve the spell and just win the game, like you get an overwhelming advantage, and then like you go from there. It's notably a large mana spell that takes an extra turn and is hard to interact with. I see that as kind of the same thing as expropriate. I don't know if you've ever had an expropriate resolve against you or resolved one yourself, but you get 1 to 4 turns in a row and you get to take everyone's best permanents and you can only interact with it on the stack, and it's a large mana spell.
But if you cast Expropriate, the table has to sit there and watch you do all this. And that makes it fun.
Yeah,
Does it?
sure.
Because if you just won on the spot, they wouldn't get to have that experience with you.
I'm pretty sure there was a gentleman that commented on multiple videos that I'm a part of, specifically too. But he talked about Storm only being, or at least the Storm play patterns only being able to attack it either on the, like, bully that person or interact with them on the stack, which is not true. I can get into that later.
Yep.
But that is the initial thought. And expropriate, like Matt was talking about, kind of only does it on the stack. There's a few corner cases, like you can give yourself, no, it doesn't target.
It
So
doesn't target.
Yeah,
you
so
can't
things
even
like
give
Teferi's
yourself
protection
hexproof.
doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's whack. Well,
You can-
Teferi's protection matters because it phases your stuff out, so
Yeah,
they
so you
can't
can't
touch
give them
it.
stuff.
Oh, yeah.
You can give yourself additional votes so that you can give them more extra turns. Pivot.
Expropriate against the timid player.
There we
That
go.
feels bad. I'm curious, Michael. You're a filthy casual. What?
Yeah, I'm the mass player group. Fuck off.
What? That's fine. I also tend to lean into filthy casual stuff when I'm not playing Storm. Why do you think the ban list has not achieved its goals?
So my big thing in Commander is overall deck diversity. I hate seeing cards that are played just because they are value. I fucking despise value for value. It's my issue with Darkside, my issue with Smothering Tithe, and a lot of other cards in the game. Because I hate seeing decks that run these things for no other reason, and they're good. I hate that people are building decks with the same 30 cards if they're in a color. To me, that's unhealthy for a game. And when you start lacking that, or people are just throwing all these same cards in, you start getting to that same issue Yu-Gi-Oh has, where you are nothing but a competitive game. And that is, to me, problematic in a game that was intended to be and made for the casual player group.
Sure, I agree.
And one of my things for like how it doesn't is there's the big difference between Wizards and the Commander Rule Committee. Wizards has openly acknowledged that they do not acknowledge the secondary market. The
That's a
Commanders,
lie.
in their statements,
Yeah.
we all know there's some bullshit to it, but the Commander Rules Committee though has not done that. They have openly stated in a post about Darkside, the reason why they won't ban Darkside is because of his price. Because theoretically, his price makes it harder for people to play him and have access to him, which I feel is bullshit. I despise
You
that.
only need one person in the group to play.
No, yeah, I hate how a card's price is stopping it from being banned when it's a problematic thing.
Yeah, that's a very interesting perspective on that for a couple of reasons. For one of the reasons that some of these cards are on the ban list is because they're expensive. Like, you look at the reason that they originally put the Moxes and the Lotus on there is because they are expensive. Now, mind you, Lotus should probably be on the ban list anyway because it's super powerful. The Moxen are a gray area, but I think they should still be banned because
It would be in every single
they'd be in
deck.
every single thing.
they would be in every deck, but more importantly, they would give 5 color decks a bigger advantage over everyone else because you get 5 additional Moxen. The other point that you brought up, everyone's just always playing the same 30 cards or whatever. I mean, there's some amount to that. Like, if you are looking at it from a competitive standpoint, I don't mean like CEDH competitive, I mean just like go to a tournament and actually try to win the game as efficiently as possible kind of a perspective. Like, there are cards that are just very good. And if someone's trying to just win the game, you can't really be mad at them for trying to win the game in the best way. If you're in a more casual group and people are just playing like all of the best cards and only the best cards and they just make generic soup pile, get new friends? I don't know. It shows to me that your whatever play group you're playing with just lacks creativity in some way.
Like, lack vision.
They lack vision. When I make decks for the channel, I don't start off with a list of cards that absolutely need to be in this deck. Like, if I'm playing blue, I'm probably playing Cyclonic Rift, but which we'll get to later about Cyclonic Rift. I'm not going to put in Ledger Shredder and Fairy Mastermind and Rhystic Study and all these cards just because they're good if they don't fit the theme of the deck. Like, if they don't help me advance my game plan, they are not necessarily going to make the cut.
A prime example, I have a Rule of Law deck. Rule of Law is an enchantment, a group of enchantments that say each player can only play one spell a turn. And the point of the deck is to make a very fair game. I don't play Rhystic Study in that deck. Rhystic Study is a very good card, but when you are playing only one spell a turn, it turns out you have a lot of extra mana that you can pay the one for your one spell. So that card is very bad in that deck. I thought about playing it anyway as another Rule of Law, because if you're playing the one, you will play less spells. But turns out people don't really care about that when they just want to do their own thing. So I'm like, I guess I can draw a bunch of cards and like win the game because you gave me a bunch of cards. Or I could just not play this card because I don't like the play patterns it induces. So there's that too.
You saying Rhystic Study triggered this in me. One of the interesting cards that they have on the ban list is Library of Alexandria. And the reason that they have it on the ban list isn't because of the price. Because like Bazaar of Baghdad's legal and Mishra's Workshop's legal. Guy's Cradle and Tabernacle and all these other stupid reserved list lands are all legal. The reason that they have it on the ban list is because they think that it is too hard for a new player to understand why they are losing if someone activates Library every turn. And I have an issue with this for a lot of reasons. For one, Rhystic Study does the same thing. Someone gets a Rhystic Study out, people who have not played against Rhystic Study enough or don't care if they win, they just want to do their thing, are not going to pay it, and then suddenly they're going to have a million cards in hand.
They often won't know why they lost.
And they often won't know why they lost. And Rhystic Study is a much more powerful effect than Library of Alexandria.
Yeah, I think looking at this, that kind of applies across the board. Every point they make on things they're trying to avoid, the cards that they list, there are ones that are just as good or better that aren't banned.
Yeah.
So it says that these cards on the list are like cards you should look out for, cards like these, and then discuss. We talked about this before. Discuss about amongst your group. Cards like these shouldn't be banned. It's so hard to discuss with a group and just go through this list of thousands of Magic cards and be like, yeah, these ones shouldn't be played in our group.
Yeah.
Like, it's never gonna work.
It's
Specifically a new group, right? Like if you're playing with the same guys every week, then yeah, you guys can do whatever you want, right? And it's a lot easier to have those conversations because you see each other all the time. Like, hey, Michael, that card sucks. Stop playing it. Like, it's super, super simple. Or just like, this is why I want to play that card. Cool. Let's see if we can get you an alternative or something like that. Like, it should be a two-way street discussion. But it's so hard to do that when you walk into a new card shop or an environment where you don't know people.
But
And-
even like you
it's-
said, like everyone takes it as law. I mean, like I do too. Like
Yeah.
no one really wants to make their own game of Magic.
Right.
They just want to follow the rules.
Right.
Rule zero is nice, but it's also feels very counterproductive. Because even like when you okay something being rule zeroed, others are more strict on it. Example with Brendan. Brendan had a Golos deck for his Eldrazi. You even you painted the
Yeah,
Golos
I
to
did
be
a,
an
I did a,
Eldrazi.
I did a custom art with Golos with like
He was
tentacles.
Eldrazi 5. He became like the fucking
pretty good.
Pathfinder for it. Everyone in the house is okay with him playing the deck because it was a custom painted card and it's just fun thematic.
Yeah, but
But he
speaking of
refuses.
which, he did just switch over to Kenra. Like you
Yeah,
said.
because that's what you do. I think there was something on that thing that Corbin read out about not wanting to take people's, self-expression
Creativity,
away
yeah.
and their toys, as it were. Some people had very interesting Golos decks that weren't just 5-color soup. I myself, I hadn't actually built this deck yet because they banned it before I could, but I was going to build a Turbo Depths deck because Golos fetches up lands, and like, sure, you can pay 5 mana or 7 mana and do stuff with it, but it finds Dark Depths, and that was the important part to me.
For sure.
But I can't play it because they decided that he's too generically good.
We were all trying to play the same guy. They were
Yeah,
right.
I guess so. But for different reasons. Like, these are
Sure.
not the same deck.
Yeah, these are not the same deck. And then you have people like me who I don't care about Golos at all because there's not one land that I want to do,
No.
and I don't care that he can cast 3 spells for free because I can just play Apex Devastator and cast 5 spells.
Oh, my goal assessed was a Cascade deck.
Yeah.
He was in there.
When I first saw Golos, my thought was, oh, I'll just make a Golem tribal deck.
So now that we know that the ban list completely doesn't work,
In our opinion.
in our opinion. So what do you all think should make a card bannable? Or do you
Bit of it.
agree with this list? I honestly agree with their principles. I just don't think it's applied correctly.
Yeah, that. And I think both Matt and Michael brought up exactly what I think should make a card bannable. So Matt talked about more of the logical stuff, right? Like power level, how it warps a format to an extent. Michael touched more on the not tangible things that makes a card bannable. Is it ubiquitous? Do you have to completely change the play patterns that you want to play because you have to account for this card and stuff like that? So I think
Michael-
a combination.
I think he's more into like the theme and feel of it, which I completely agree with. He might be surprised as
one of
much as I
my-
just push value cards
Well,
into my decks.
you yourself have stated that you need someone else to restrict you because
Yeah.
otherwise you won't. Because
I
you
would
can't tell
I would be
yourself.
happier with the game if someone forced me not to play those cards.
My big thing in Magic generally is I don't care at this point, I guess. Okay, take Kemba Acknowledgement, which she's what, 3 and a white. If you were to sit down at a table with her as the commander, but with an Esper deck, and say, hey, she costs 1 of each blip and 1, and instead of cats, the knights, I wouldn't fight you. If you make the whole deck fit around that theme, I have 0 problems playing against it because it's a fun thematic thing for me. I don't care if it's all no or all banned, but if it's just a fun thematic deck and like it's not just all the fucking Esper value I can throw in the goddamn thing because I can make it busted with Kemba if she was Esper, I have 0 issues with it.
Yeah, I don't deny you could have fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
I just don't really like house rules.
Fair enough.
Well, house rules aren't duplicatable, right? That's the issue. You can't roll up to any LGS across this country and are guaranteed to find a play group that'll let you do that. So what I like
I
doing,
completely understand with that.
yeah, so my first thing, if you rolled up with your Esper Kimba deck, my first thought would be, okay, what Esper commander can we actually play instead of Kimba that will give you this like same point? And maybe there's not one, but I at least want to have that discussion with you to see if I can help you out, so that, because I think it'd be a lot funner for you in the long run, a lot more fun if you could play that deck that you care about, that you work so hard on, against any play group and have them see your creativity without being weirded out that like, yo, Kimba's not 3 colors, bro. If you take that barrier away, now they just see your creativity, and that's going to be a much better experience, not only for you, but for them too, because they, like, who knows, they'll go and tell their buddies like, hey, I was at the shop on Friday and I saw this Esper Knights deck and that thing was crazy. Anyway, so yeah, power level, if a card is warping the format, and it restricts creativity, which then goes more into the commander philosophy, cards should be banned because not everybody is strong enough to just not play a card. I own a Smothering Tithe, and it is currently on my desk. I know exactly where it is on my desk, and it is collecting dust because I just don't put it in decks.
Yeah.
So if you go on EDH back, you can look at the top cards past 2 years, but it shows you the amount of decks that are in EDH rec that it can possibly be part of, and the percent of the decks that it is in. Then if you go to individual cards and some color factions, you can find all the other stats along those lines if you just actually look for it. Smothering Tithe is overall in 26% of all decks that can possibly run it. The only cards that are above it is, in order, Swords to Plowshares, Path to Exile, and Generous Gift, which all of them are less than $1. All of them do something for you, but they also have a negative. They do something for the opponent. But they're all just standard staple removal. They're not just only value. If you go to Mono White, it's almost 1/2 of all Mono White decks are running Smothering Tithe. And even just looking at the 15 top Mono White commanders, and it's going off the numbers from the 15th, because even on the 16th, numbers were changing and growing. Out of those 15, the vast majority is over 40% all running Smothering Tithe, and only 3 of those those 15 commanders make sense to run a Smothering Tithe in, being the 2 Angel decks and then the White Dominus. But most of all those other decks are small, little, token creating, 1/1 human artifact soldier beatstick decks. And the mass majority of them also have, in the little synergy tab, negative synergy with the card. But the mass majority of people are still running it. Which to me, when it's that apparent, that's kind of not okay. It's not being ran in the deck because it fits what the deck does. I'm not a fan of the argument of white was so bad that it needs Smothering Tithe to keep up. If anything, I think mono white, instead of mana, they have other ways for it, as well as the colorless artifact portion that everyone else has access to. They could have used an actual staple thing of draw, like majority of other colors have. Green has it based on creatures and power. Red has sacking and looting.
Impulse draw.
Yeah, or
looting, ravaging.
Looting, thank you.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking of. Black has draw for losing life. Blue just has draw. White could use an actual staple thing of draw, which it currently doesn't.
Well, they just printed one. Trouble in Paris is pretty good.
Oh,
Is that from the newest? Is that from the Fallout set?
the 4-mana
That's
enchantment from the last regular
Murders.
set.
Murders,
Murder.
I love.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't done anything about those. But if they could use more of it instead of just this, which to me is just people running it just for value, whether or not it makes sense or fits the deck. And when people are just running it because it's just generically that good, to me it's toxic for the game.
From my perspective, I get what you're coming from, but I don't really think I would consider that to be something that's bannable. Like, if players are using it as a crutch because they don't have any creativity for, like, making their deck do other things, so be it. Like, if they want their deck to be stronger and that's the only way they know how to do it, maybe eventually they will learn that, like, this card is good, but it's not actually helping me in any way. I've seen plenty of board states where someone has a Smothering Tithe and 20 treasures and, like, 1 card in hand. What are they going to do at that point? It's not helping them in any way. I think that if you want to play a card in your deck because you think it is good, if it isn't actually, like, broken, I don't have a problem with you doing so. If you're playing the card wrong, or even if it is helping you, like, that's just kind of like a deck building choice you made. I don't want to take away people's abilities to do so in random decks so that it's still available when it is actually, useful or thematic for a deck.
I would agree that the card is just kind of generically good and it's running a lot of decks, but the fact that it's $40 or whatever and the 3 cards above it are cheap, like, do you think those cards should be banned? Even though they really don't, they're just generic good removal.
So that they are just generic good removal. It's like, I don't know. To me, I feel the same way as Murder. I don't have an issue with Murder. Well, I guess Murder is a bad card, but I mean, Ashes to Ashes. Let's go Ashes to Ashes. I guess I love Ashes. It's one of my favorites. Ashes to Ashes is a card that I will honestly put in a lot of black decks because it's exile 2 non-artifact creatures, lose 5 life for 3. It's solid, easy removal, and it's also a cheap card. To me, though, a lot of removal though isn't worth a ban. I don't feel like removal is really overly powerful. I don't feel like removal itself is a detriment to the game. I feel like removal itself is healthy to the game. And also, those 3 cards provide a negative. people may not feel that impactful, you are giving your opponent life, you're giving them a resource, you're giving them a creature, you are giving them something in return. And then, like I said, I feel like removal itself is just genetically good for the game. I feel like some things are a bit not okay at times.
Smothering Tithe is a 0-for-1 if you always pay.
I have been in game. I was in a tournament 2 Sundays ago where a guy brought out a Smothering Tithe, and I was drawing 6 cards a turn off of Sylvan Library, and I was able to pay and still do stuff. So
Jesus Christ. Mono green player.
I'm petty. I was also in a game on Friday, this last Friday.
2 days ago.
Bless his heart. He played a Smothering Tithe. He ended that game with about 40 to 50 treasures, no cards in hand.
I thought when you were laughing, pointing, you were like, "That's the guy who has a stack of treasures, so you can't do anything with it."
Yeah, also you. Yeah, I've seen Jason do that too. But it's like there's ways around it. Also, 1-for-1 removal is inherently card disadvantage in a multiplayer format as well. So that might also be subconsciously why you are okay with it. I agree with you. I think if you're playing a card in a deck, not necessarily because it works with the function of your deck, but because you think it's generically good or it's a staple, you are doing it wrong. But I think that's also a conversation, right? Like, I know I annoy Matt sometimes because we'll be playing a game and I'll go out of my way to talk to somebody and try to help them be better at the game.
I don't have a problem with you helping people be better. I have a problem with, like, we need to be somewhere and Corbin's been talking for 80 minutes. And if you are putting this card in your deck and it doesn't fit there, I will defend your ability to do so even though you're wrong. You can be wrong. I can't optimize everyone's decks. I'm not going to force everyone to play better. Not everyone wants to play better. I'll defend your choice to use, not that I have any, power over this or anything, but to use cards that are not necessarily good.
Yeah, I do agree that like Smothering Tithe, it does feel different from just the generic removals. They don't feel as bad. It makes me really wish that they would print more push removal that fits into different themes.
Yes.
So everyone's not just running those 2 cards in every white deck.
Yep.
You're never gonna have me
Get something to
disagree
do with
that,
tokens,
Jason.
have something to do with untapping.
I would like a lot of that, and like I said, I also feel like when it comes to what makes a card bannable, price shouldn't be considered.
I think Wizards should look at the prices and print the shit out of those cards.
I mean, also that. And they have a little bit.
I don't have a problem with them printing cards into the dirt. I did not get into Magic the Gathering for the financial reasons. Like, I've spent a lot of money on Magic cards through the years, like a lot of money. And I have some very expensive cards, but if they abolish the reserve list tomorrow, good. That means more people can play Legacy. If it allows people to have access to the game and make their decks more powerful because they can run the better options, do it.
Honestly, you'll still have your collector's value. So I was looking at this the other day. Nicole Bolas is my favorite Magic the Gathering character. Period. That's it. And there's Nicole Bolas's you can pick up for 25 cents. And there's Bolas variants that you can pick up for like $100. And then in original Nicole Bolas and Legends, it's like $200. So he's still expensive, even though you can go get the same card that's a more recent reprint for like 10 cents.
Yeah,
But
Llanowar Elves is the same way. Beta Llanowar Elves is multiple hundreds of dollars, but you can go and get a Dominaria United or whatever.
so the Smothering Tide thing, the ubiquity of it in decks versus like value versus whatever. You can say the same thing to an extent about basic lands. And we don't do stats on basic lands because everybody's just like, oh yeah, well, basic lands or whatever. Playing a basic land, and granted there's going to be different layers to this and all that, but from a logical standpoint, playing a land every turn is one of the most powerful things you can do in this game. Period. It fuels your plays, it allows you to do more actions, like hitting that every turn. That's why landfall decks are so whatever. Because they play multiple lands. They get effects off of playing those lands too, but the more mana you have, the more actions you get. And obviously Smothering Tithe does that, like it gives you access to more mana, right? That's why it's good value or whatever. But if you look at statistics of lands, if you have a mono white deck and you're playing 30 basic planes or whatever, you could be playing a different land. You're going to have lands that come into play tapped. You're going to have lands that do things or whatever. And that's why even on EDH Rec, it splits them up between regular lands and utility lands, right? Just because the card is showing up in X amount of decks, like the fundamental issue that you brought up with Smothering Tide, and I get it, so don't raise me in the comments like, well, Smothering Tide's not a basic land. Yeah, I get it. But that same logic when you were looking at deck building and creativity and what cards you could play in a specific spot can also be applied to basic lands and such like that. It's probably very bad, but you can build a Tainted Pact mana base and mono black. I would not recommend doing so, but if you have a reason to be creative, you can be creative.
So ban Island?
But yeah, that is my hot take for this podcast. Ban Basic Island. TLDR, look at the cards you're playing. If they don't actually make sense in your deck, it doesn't matter if it's a good card or not. Don't run it. Run something else. Your creativity will be more happy. Your deck will be cooler. I was just helping a guy the other day. He was building a deck. The whole point of the deck is to make multiple copies of Share the Spoils. There it is. Look it up. Jason will put it up in the whatever. Share the Spoils. He just wants to make multiple copies of it. So I'm looking at his deck and I'm like, hey, why are you playing Rhystic Study? Why are you playing all these like randomly good cards? And he's like, well, because I need to draw. Like, your hand doesn't matter, bro. You're on Share the Spoils. Like, you're gonna be casting cards off your Share the Spoils. You don't need Enchantress effects. You don't need Sylvan Library. You don't need all these extra cards, because the Share the Spoils gives you the extra cards. We ended up cutting like 10 to 15 cards from his deck, and he got to play more stupid stuff, so he was even happier. So just be better. Easy.
So moving on, do you guys think that the ban list should be more focused on competitive or casual play?
I have a feeling we're going to be kind of split on this based on how we play the game, but
I think I would enjoy it more if the format was split into two separate formats. Just one how it is now, maybe even stuff off the ban list, and then one with a much stronger ban list that takes these points that were listed earlier and really leans into it.
we had this discussion briefly in the previous episode of the podcast.
Yeah.
Check it out if you haven't. The issue I have with splitting the format into like a CEDH list and then a commander list is that if you have a ban list for a format, people are going to try to play that in some kind of a competitive setting. You are going to wind up with the exact same issue, I guess, where people playing your less competitive commander are going to try to make competitive decks for it. And then certain cards are going to rise to the top and they're going to be more powerful strategies.
Yeah, I understand that, but the power level that I like to play at isn't CEDH. So with that being the upper limit of the format I'm currently playing, it's just a personal thing, really. It's just, I would be happier if it wasn't there, if I could just ignore all the fast mana and all the cards that are used in 30% of decks or whatever. I just not have to worry about those and focus on building competitive decks in this other format that will be less competitive than the top competitive decks can be currently.
It is possible to take all of those cards that you think are problems for a casual setting and make them banned and competitive as well. Like, depending on what kinds of things you were looking at. Like, if Mana Crypt is the problem, then ban Mana Crypt.
I understand, but I know some people do like to play CEDH.
Yeah,
I enjoy to play it sometime, like as a. But it feels like a different format.
If CEDH had Mana Crypt banned, then they would still be CEDH.
No,
it would just
but
be CEDH without Mana Crypt.
The format I would be talking about, preferably in my ideal world, would also be banning Soul Ring. It would also be banning all the
Ban
other fast mana.
There are people who are very on board with that. Like, I think that that's the French list.
I would be okay with them doing that for the Commander format, but I know a lot of people do like to play those kinds of decks.
Yeah.
If you're playing competitively, you're going to play whatever the most powerful tools available are, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you get to. If you ban Soul Ring, Mana Crypt, Mana Vault, Grim Monolith, all that fun stuff, people are still going to play CEDH. It's just going to be a different CEDH. It's going to have less fast mana or no fast mana, obviously, but there's still going to be like Thassa's Oracle Tainted Pack.
Other types of cards would
So-
also be heavily restricted, or it would be a format that's choosing from a much smaller card pool.
So you're fond of either decreasing the general power level of the format or playing Brawl.
That's exactly right, yeah.
Yeah, which is fine. Like, I think that's fine.
4-player Brawl, to be clear.
Yeah.
I think that it should be tiered towards competitive play, like literally every other format. It's about what the competitive things are. You are allowed to play casual Vintage. It's not going to look anything like competitive Vintage, but like you can take the Vintage card pool and the Vintage ban list and you can make decks around it. This is exactly what I did for my first few years of Magic. The local store had Vintage tournaments. No one had any, well, there were like 2 guys with power and there was 1. The rest of us were playing like mono black control, and I was using my demonic tutor to go find diabolic edict and things like that. Like, you can do that. It's analogous to the way that like people are playing Commander. Like, it doesn't matter to you if Flash is banned, generally speaking, as a casual player, but it matters a lot to the competitive players. Same thing with Tainted Pact and Demonic Consultation, or Thassa's Oracle, if you think that's the bigger problem, which it probably is, honestly. If you are looking at the most broken a card can be and banning it because it is extremely broken at its worst, I think the format is better than if you're like, well, I don't think everyone enjoys it when, you know, someone plays Iona because it could make the feel bads for one player sometimes. And it's like, yeah, but that's because that guy's a dick and you let him get a 9-mana creature into play. You don't like it, and you're not the player that's getting locked out, maybe kill it and teach him a lesson. I don't think that Iona, for instance, should be banned because, like, sometimes it makes bad feelings in casual when, like, competitively that card is nothing.
In order to protect Commander as it is, I do think you should ban towards the competitive side. If you ban, let's say, Thassa's Oracle, not only are you forcing the competitive scene to evolve and be more creative, you are preventing fill bads from generically good win cons or generically good whatever. Now, granted, you will lock some people out of some creativity. So, for example, I have a Thassa's, or no, not anymore. I took it out. But I had a Thassa's Oracle in my Garuda clone tribal Grixis deck, because if I get a non-legendary Garuda out, I will then have devotion to like 30 by the time I flip this Thassa's Oracle as I'm milling myself. So like, it's like one of the fairest ways to win with Thassa's Oracle ever, right?
Yeah, to that point, just as an aside, sorry.
Yeah, no, you're good.
I had a Locust God deck, and the Locust God 6 mana, and whenever you draw cards, you make a 1/1
With haste.
with haste. And if you combine it with Kindred Discovery, you draw your deck, and you most importantly have to draw your deck because none of those are May abilities, so you just like die immediately unless you flash in a Labman or something like that. So I had this deck before Thassa's Oracle was printed, and I had the card Flash in my deck, which I would use to flash in Laboratory Maniac so that I would lose instead of, I mean, so I would win instead of losing. You might argue that that's not a fair strategy per se. I'm making an infinite combo and winning off the back of Laboratory Maniac, but as far as things that the card Flash can do, that's a fair way to use Flash.
It's a 4-card win. I feel like that's fine personally.
Yeah.
Like,
And when they banned it, I'm like, I understand. I get that I would much rather not have Flash Hulk be around than have me the ability to like flash in this cheeky
Flash Lab Man.
Flash Lab Man
Yep.
in this one deck.
Yeah, and like nobody, statistically, nobody was playing Tainted Pact and Demonic Consultation
Prior to Thassa's.
prior to Thassa's Oracle outside of some food chain decks, because those cards are actually very good in a food chain strategy when you're casting Squee and Friends from exile. To go get your food chain or whatever, but I haven't heard anybody complain about the flash ban or anything that they banned for a competitive sake, and that's the only card they have done that with. But nobody's complained about Flash being banned. Nobody's gonna complain about Thassa's Oracle being banned. Like, yeah, you don't get to use it in your Merfolk tribal deck, but like, there's gonna be some grumblings, and then everybody's gonna move on, just like we always do.
I don't know, personally, I do have a biasy I do feel like it should be more tiered to casual. The mass majority of the player base falls under the casual spectrum of players. And I feel like what that's typically the healthier thing for a game is to account and go with what is the higher majority of things. I said earlier, when you start to the point where you just consider it competitive and you just start following that trend, eventually you end up with something like Yu-Gi-Oh!, which is just competitive madness. And with the game being made for casual, they made the game to be around like the theme of your leader, of your commander. It should be focused around that more so than the try hardy or more like I need to win to have fun group. And then other things such as like Thassa's. When it comes to Oracle, I don't actually have a big issue with her herself. I understand that the issue is actually with Tainted Pack and Demonic Consultation. Another version of that win that I'm okay with was brought up to me by a friend, and that's Divining Witch. It's a 2-cost
Yep.
black creature. You pay 2, you tap it, you name a card, exile top 6 cards of your library, and then you reveal cards on top of your library to reveal the named card, and then you exile all those that you revealed that want the card.
Yeah.
It's a much easier and like fair interaction for the same win,
'Cause you get
just
a
it's
full
not
turn.
an instant speed thing.
Yeah.
Peregrine Shift. And I remember correctly, Peregrine Shift is a sorcery, or more fair win with Thassa's than either of the other two. I don't mind Thassa's as a win con. I hate when it's an instant like overly difficult to interact with thing such as Demonic and Pack. And then also as a flavor theme based player, you're running a Merfolk deck. I feel like where you have plenty of blue blips, I feel like Thassa's is a fine thing. Also, I've seen people play devotion-based decks.
The problem is
Which
them
hard to
together.
consider those.
Yeah.
It's hard to consider
Because
those
none of them are
draft.
awesome on their own.
Right.
No,
but
yeah.
Okay.
I figured you guys will tear me apart on this.
We're
though.
not. No.
No. Divining Witch being the spell shaper for Demonic Consultation. For those of you that didn't know, check out Mercadian Masks block. They made a bunch of creatures that are just spells on a body that you have to discard a card to do it. That's one of them. It's Demonic Consultation, but on a creature. Having the slower exile your library stuff, yeah, that makes sense. You can do Leveler. Paradigm Shift has a lot of issues with it. Specifically, your graveyard needs to be empty or mostly empty for it to like do its thing. Mortality Shift is the same thing, and it's 7 mana as
Thought
well.
Lash.
Thought Lash, 4 mana, but you just get to do it right away. Like, there's a lot of different ways to empty your library, and they are a lot more expensive than Tainted Pact and Demonic Consultation, I agree. But if all we're looking for is the ability to interact and make it so that you can't just like I win button with minimal ability to do anything about it, Thassa's Oracle being a trigger is what sets it apart from both Labman and Jace.
Yeah.
Because Labman sits in play, you do your Demonic Consultation thing, and then you still need to draw a card. And if someone kills your Labman in response, you either need to try again over the top of it, or you die. I can kind of see going either way on that one, but I believe that Thassa's Oracle is the more broken of them.
I will not fight for Thassa to not be banned if it comes up, but personally, if it comes down to it, I'd rather see these 2 cards banned or Thassa's. I'd rather see those 2, because I feel like you can still do Thassa's much more casually. Labman and Jace are a better version of it for a more casual thing, I will
Correct.
agree. That's why I will not fight for Thassa's, but I would rather see Thassa stay over those 2 things.
So in that logic,
To a degree.
if there were creative ways that you can use Demonic Consultation and Tainted Pact, you wouldn't have an issue with those being in the format.
Lelia, done.
Yeah. So anyway, I think the issue with Thassa's Oracle in a cat, if you're banning for casual, my opinion on this matter is that you need to ban for competitive to protect casual, I guess, if that makes sense, because the stuff that you can do in competitive, like the nature of competitive will seek those things out that will accidentally come up and make games feel bad in casual. So Thassa's Oracle specifically as a thing, from a casual standpoint, it is actually very hard to interact with Thassa's Oracle. And if your specific Merfolk deck or whatever is always winning with Thassa's Oracle, and your playgroup can't deal with that because they don't know how, do you think that's going to be fun for them? Because I doubt that. And maybe there will be cases against everything we say, because nothing's right or wrong. It's all
Solid
based
gray
on
area.
opinions and experiences, right? But I think the average people, like in casual settings, people won't know how to interact with those difficult things. And Thassa's Oracle, even if you're playing it quote unquote fairly, it still is an ability that is very hard to interact with from a casual setting. The cards that usually come up in casual games, stuff like that.
If you ban for the most broken thing that a card can do, then you have no chance of it accidentally creeping into your casual games and
Yeah.
running away with things.
And it forces people to be more creative. So now you don't have this instant I win button that is hard to interact with in Merfolk. Now you have to look for other avenues and other opportunities to be creative in your casual group anyway. Like Demonic Consultation and Tainted Pact, their original intention, they're tutors.
Yeah, they're bad demonic tutor.
They're
Like
bad
they tried to
demonic
make
tutor.
they tried to make demonic tutor worse, and they succeeded, but they also didn't succeed enough.
They succeeded for a while.
Fair point.
Like an empiric tutor. Oh yeah, this is way worse than demonic tutor, except that it's half the mana and instant speed. But
Also, sometimes having stuff on top of your deck is exactly what you want.
yep,
Yeah, Boloth the Citadel, Future Sight, all that stuff. Yeah, so I think you ban towards competitive. A lot of the cards you named earlier, maybe not some other type, but Dockside specifically,
especially.
right? Matt talked about Cyclonic Rift. Those are all cards that have a competitive skew to it that the amount of times I've seen field bads in casual, and if you're not banning for competitive, then that's why Dockside has not been banned yet, right? And he's still like half of our games on this channel. I'm gonna play Dockside.
Yeah.
Okay, you could not, but no, I'm gonna play this Dockside. Like, okay, sure.
It was very important for me winning that goblins game because it made me 10 goblins.
Hey, you know,
Well,
you're
look,
playing a
that's
goblin
fine.
deck. Come on, you're
Like
good.
if you're
Yeah.
playing pirates or goblins or a whole treasure themed deck, I have zero issue with Dockside.
But speaking of Dockside and Cyclonic Rift, are there any cards that you all would like to see
Easily.
banned or unbanned?
I sure do have
Yeah.
a list of
Yeah.
cards, yeah.
Hands down.
I don't have any strong feelings on this because obviously I would like to see a lot of cards banned.
Yeah.
But I think Cyclonic Rift should be on there because everyone playing Cyclonic Rift in a round, making the game go 20 turns instead of 10, is just
My,
generically unfun.
Like Stolen Slivers, I don't want Cyclift. You know what I want instead of Cyclift? My favorite board altering spell of all time.
Upheaval.
World Purge.
Sure.
World Purge is I love that card.
card,
Everyone shuffle everything back.
You mean Warp World? World
No.
Purge just kills everything.
No, World Purge doesn't kill it all. It returns it all.
I'm thinking of World Fire. No, never mind.
Why would you think World Purge killed everything?
Anyway, so my list, I have quite the extensive list. I don't think Recurring Nightmares should be banned. The reason that they said that it's banned is because it's hard to interact with, and it might be the only spell you play for the rest of the game. And it's like, yeah, and if you play Thassa's Oracle, that's the only spell you play for the rest of the game. It's not hard to interact with. Play more Graveyard Hate. No one plays enough Graveyard Hate. Anyway.
I agree with that statement.
Paradox Engine, because I think it's funny. I get why it was banned. I don't think that it's actually that strong from a competitive standpoint, but it does make games take a while. The thing is with that, like, there are a lot of other things that meet that criteria that are not on the ban list. Coalition Victory, they say that it's hard to interact with. Again,
It's really hard to get Coalition Victory off in the first place, not counting its mana cost.
you need 8 mana,
Like-
and you need a land of every basic land type, and you need a permanent of every color, creature of every color. I think Coalition Victory is easier to interact with than they say. Like, if no one has the ability to kill a creature or 2 creatures or whatever, or if you know someone's going for this, like, maybe keep their creatures clean off the board or discard or something. Like, yeah, it's still definitely a thing that you can win with, but it's not as hard to interact with as they say.
Yeah, I feel like you could surprise your group once with that, but then
Yeah.
after that, they're going to be seeing how many dual lands you have.
Yeah.
They have to get the if it's even the 1/5 color creature, they have to get it out there and then cast the 8 mana spell. Like, you have time.
Yeah. Primeval Titan, I think that the days of, oh, I've reanimated Primeval Titan 3 times and I'm way ahead of everyone, haha. Like, the format's moved on. Primeval Titan's not that powerful anymore. You can do better things. You can reanimate Villas or something, or Razaketh. Razaketh's way better. Raphaelos is kind of the same point. Like, yeah, he's very strong in the command zone, but he's a 2/1. Literally every color has a cheap way to kill creatures. He ramps, but he's still mono green, and I'm not saying that he's better than Selvala, because
Yeah.
I'm not sure that he is, and Selvala's legal.
Well, if you are playing powerful creatures in the command zone, Matt, you're forced to run removal, which is gonna reduce the creativity of your deck.
Yep,
That's why they should print more creative removal.
removal. Yeah, well, people still wouldn't run it.
Also, hot take: there's a lot of creative removal right
Or
now. Not
removal
enough.
that's like pushed. Like
Dispatch,
I mean,
Anyway.
more people should be running dispatch.
probably.
So,
I don't think Iona
I'll
should be
argue that.
banned. We touched on that earlier. It's like, yeah, it's kind of a dick move sometimes, but it's not any worse than a lot of other stacks pieces, and it's 9 mana. It might lock someone out of the game. And then Optic Mirror. I realize that you can take infinite turns with it. There are a lot of things you can take infinite turns with. I don't think that it's good enough on its own. It's a value engine, sure. It's an artifact, which means that every color except black can just like deal with it for 1 or 2 mana like pretty easily, and it takes an entire turn to do anything because you have to play it for 5, exile a card for its mana cost, and then get to your next upkeep. Considering biorhythm, there are some issues with that. It's a little harder to interact with, and if you
Yeah.
are playing that green ramp stuff,
in casual, you think most people are going to be playing creatures anyway. Then in competitive, I can't imagine it's very good at all.
you can dovetail it off of like a board wipe or something, and then just
And
like,
kill
I have the
one.
only creature, ha ha ha. But
Sure.
and
it is hard to pull off.
Or dovetail. Yeah, my
You-
4 cost board wipe into my. Is it 8 mana? 10 mana?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would
It's
argue
bad.
biorhythm is actually better in competitive because there tend to be less creatures in like the higher competitive.
Hull Breacher, I get why that was banned as well, but I don't know that it's like necessarily deserving of it. Prophet of Crufix, same thing. Sunray Titan, same thing. Gift Ungiven is a very powerful tutor, but is it worse than
Intuition.
Intuition? And Intuition's legal? Like, I don't know. I could see arguments for Yawgmoth's Bargain coming off the ban list because Necropotence is legal, and Adnos is legal, and Bolas' Citadel is legal, and it's very analogous to all of those. Things I would add, Dockside. I think it's too powerful. Like, it's way too easy to loop that thing, and even if you don't loop it, like going from 3 mana to 10 mana or something in a turn. Like, Black Lotus is banned for a reason, and it adds more mana than Black Lotus a lot of the times, and it's easy to loop, and that's kind of a problem. Thassa's Oracle we touched on extensively already. I would also consider Cyclonic Rift. If Upheaval is banned, Cyclonic Rift is kind of analogous to that. It warps the game significantly in favor of one person. Similarly, Underworld Breach, like, one of the reasons why Paradox Engine is banned is because it allows you to basically win out of a board state that you've built up just by playing the game. Underworld Breach is kind of a similar thing. Like, oh, I've played 12 spells this game, my graveyard's full, I can Underworld Breach and win, basically out of nowhere, and you can combo it with things, and it turns Graveyard into a resource, which again, play more Graveyard interaction. Soul Guide Lantern is colorless and cheap, and it cycles, and you can put it in any deck.
Ban better Yawgmoth's Will.
I know it comes like removing off the ban list. Balance, I can see you for balance coming off. I don't think balance is all that bad. Honestly, I'm not a big competitive player. I don't
That's
know
like, let me
the
prove you
competitive-
wrong.
No, I'm
Let
pretty
me
sure he
tell
can.
you.
I said, looking from where I sit, y'all have seen how I play and
Sure,
how much
yeah.
shits I give generally.
A
Personally,
fair balance is not a broken card.
uh,
Fair balance.
I'm pretty sure you can. I'm pretty sure you can break it. I'm pretty sure that's part of the reason why it's on there. But
Let me tell
no,
you the good
I
news.
want faith in players, not just doing the dumb like the broken shit because they can.
Notably,
you
does
will not
not.
have that.
Yeah.
Notably, yeah, balance
I
notably
expect-
doesn't say the word
expect.
artifact on it.
Fair enough. Blades. I like blades because even the person playing blades has to follow through with it. Like I don't think blades is all that bad as a commander or just as a creature in general.
Let me tell you. No, I'm just kidding. Go, keep going.
Coalition victory, hands down. Like as a big 5-color player, it's not an easy thing to fucking get off. In all honesty, it takes time, and once again, it's a very costly card. Caracas, tap for a white. Hey, tap, return legendary creature to your hand. I'm pretty sure there are ways to bust it. Don't get me wrong. There's plenty of ways to untap a land.
I just assumed it was because people don't like in their commanders return.
Yeah,
But
exactly why
but
it
with
was
tuck
done.
protection though, like
Yeah.
it's not. It's to your hand. It's so much better than to your fucking deck.
I actually agree with this one. Like Caracas, the reason that they have it on there is because it's a field ad because you can bounce people's commanders and they're decks are built around their commanders. But
Can you bounce your own?
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
it's just legendary
Yeah,
creature.
any legendary creature. But if Karakas is banned and Draenith Magistrate is not,
Yeah.
like, the difference is that Draenith's easier to kill. I could see, if you're going to keep one banned, like, for philosophical reasons, both of them should be banned.
The issue with Draenith, though, is it stops other broken stuff in the format, like your Underworld Breaches, your Yawgmoth Wills, stuff like that.
Potentially bannable cards themselves, yeah.
Yeah. So if you ban all those, then yeah.
Mira, Mira, I feel like can just come off. Sway of the Stars. Once again, I don't see a lot of the competitive aspect of it. I don't feel like Sway of the Stars is a terrible card. I feel like it can be fun, but I don't feel like it's innately
If
just
you
powerful
unban
enough.
Worldfire, I don't know why
Sway the Stars is
Sway
still
of
on
the
there.
Stars is still on there.
Fair enough.
When it comes to like cards to consider, Biohim, that one I honestly like. That one I can see the argument of keeping it, but honestly I feel like it can't come off. Iona, I agree. Iona can come off. Becoming Nightmare, I agree. When it comes to cards being added, Darkside, Smothering Tithe, Demonic Consultation, Tainted Pack, Psych Rift, Souling, and a lot of the other fast manas. Because I have a lot of time when it comes to some mana locks. There's a lot of fast manas left, but then you have things like, example, Jeweled Lotus. I think Jeweled Lotus is a really good card for monocolor commanders, and it helps them fight off the tricolor and other color commanders like that. But at the same time, I feel like it is a very powerful card, just in general.
I mean,
Turn
it's
two
Black
pivot.
Lotus.
Yeah. So I definitely feel like that is a card that you can argue for it to be banned.
Sure.
I
agree.
don't know, I have a whole thing on just Darkside, but it seems that we're all in pretty much
Is that the
agree.
Darkside page?
Yeah.
Well, this right here is all Darkside, and it's all just using Venota as an example.
Yeah, he's
He
strong.
put a word in there for every treasure Darkside made. I did notice that we have kind of a lot of the same cards on the list. Like, you had Smothering Tithe and the flip a coin on Tainted Pack versus Thassa's Oracle, but it is very interesting that a lot of those cards were
Yeah.
TLDR.
banned
the
Basic
Bagman-
Island.
Yeah, ban Basic Island. Everything else is a figment of your imagination. Comment section didn't like that last time, so I had to sneak it in.
You can talk all you want about the intent of the format and the spirit of what they originally designed it to be, but it's not that anymore. It has grown beyond that capability.
In the end, the game is just the rules.
If your number one consideration is the actual health of the format to breed creativity, you actually owe it to yourself and the format and the people you are trying to make this game fun for to have a ban list and to have structure that is helping them. Like Matt said, having Rule Zero do the heavy lifting or whatever. I believe that is a mistake, and you need to be better than that.
With that agreement, I think we're going to wrap it up.
Yay!
Thanks everyone for watching. See you next time.